Hello and welcome to Legally Talking with me, Tarun Nangia. Today, my guest is Patrick Rowe. He is Accenture's Chief Compliance Officer and General Counsel for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And as Chief Compliance Officer, Patrick is responsible for leading the ethics and compliance function, employment law, and geographic matters, including compliance issues that arise from different market units. Today, we're going to speak to him about the rise of artificial intelligence and the specific issues that it has raised, how those issues are going to be tackled. Just before the interview, when I was speaking to Patrick, I realized that Accenture employs more than 330,000 people in India. So that's a huge number. Even I was not aware of the same. And this is their contribution to India. They're huge investors into India. They've shown confidence in the Indian market and, of course, the talent that they employ here. So good to see you, Patrick, and thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
And you came recently to India. You just came in a day or two ago.
I came in at the start of the week.
Okay.
Great to be back. I've been coming to India since 1992, first as a tourist, but then many years I've made trips for business.
So, okay, you had an interest in India prior to your professional commitment.
It started with Indian authors and Indian food, like for many people, I think. And then I came and traveled all over the place, and I had the most amazing experience.
Glad to know that. Any city that you visited when you came here?
My favorite city? I think, can I say to a Delhi person?
Yes.
I think I might say Mumbai.
Okay.
Is that controversial?
No, it's not. And what food did you any pick that you would like to take?
I think I'd really love masala dosa.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people in Bangalore would be happy because, and I think it's phenomenally doing in North India too. I think North Indians are having masala dosa for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
So it's not the case in South though.
No.
But coming on to the topic, I want to ask you that the rise of technology often is much faster than law can keep up. And do you think that the current legal frameworks that we have are adequately equipped to sort of regulate the rise of artificial intelligence? Is law keeping up pace with AI?
It really isn't. So there are over 300 pieces of legislation or regulation all around the world around the topic of AI. And they're all taking different approaches. Some are quite principles-based, but they are failing to take advantage or to address some of the technologies as they're coming out so fast. So just think back to, it wasn't that long ago that Gen AI was launched into the marketplace by the various LLM providers. And then rapidly we come to agentic AI and the way that can create autonomous agents to do different tasks. And then now we're in something else again, which is co-working or co-pilots. Microsoft has its co-pilot function. And that is someone who sits alongside you, giving you critical feedback about the way in which you do your work every day. Now, there are obvious implications for the type of work we do in the services industries and professional services. Regulation is not keeping pace with that at all. It's way behind. Some of them are quite principles-based. In terms, for example, the EU AI Act was one of the biggest pieces of legislation around this topic that came out a few years ago, and we were been preparing for that. But then, as I said, rapidly you had all these other technologies, and the frameworks that the legislation puts in place just can't keep pace. And the risk, of course, is that it stifles innovation as well. And so there's tried to be some retrofitting into the EU AI Act, for example, but it's a bit clunky at the moment. So it remains to be seen how the regulators are going to step up and encourage innovation, because otherwise countries, technology markets will be streets ahead and they'll always be playing catch up.
Now, as far as the AI systems are concerned, there are issues that are raised of, if I read out the lines, of bias, lack of transparency, unintended consequences. So when you deploy AI, what measures you have to take?
So at Accenture, we've set up a centre called our Responsible AI Centre of Excellence, and its job is to screen both from the perspective of the things we use to run our business, but also for the things we're selling to our clients as well, looking at precisely the things you talked about. Is there bias within the system? Has there been validation of the model? Monitoring the model to see that it doesn't drift in the way that it is used in the day-to-day. They assess those things to determine, for example, is it a high-risk use case? A high-risk use case might be one where a fundamental human right about education, employment, health, or children's rights is impeded in such a way. Or, for example, In recruiting, you're starting to see a lot of the use of AI tools to screen candidates' applications. Are all of those applications being treated, those applications for work, are they all being treated fairly and equally? So for example, if a woman has been having children and she's been out of the workforce for some period of time, you want to make sure that the AI screening tool doesn't bounce out her application right from the start. But that's just a small illustration. And again, what the team does is put in place both the checks, the mitigation, and then the monitoring to make sure it's doing what it should be doing. But the important thing is around having a human in the loop. And that means not necessarily that you're just checking everything that the AI does, because if you're doing that, you're not taking advantage of AI. Rather, that you are checking at the appropriate moments. So if I establish an AI program and set it to do certain tasks, I would expect that it comes back to me at certain points to check in, and that's the validation. But we're starting to evolve beyond human in the loop. It also needs to be seen as human in the lead in relation to this. AI is a tool to support us, and we need to be directing its efforts in the way in which we run our companies, the way in which we run law firms as well.
In fact, in large corporations like yours, who ultimately bears the responsibility of the AI bearing decisions that you take for deployment? The management or the board of the company or the developers of the AI, because there may be unintended consequences, because we are in the development phase of AI. Who bears responsibility in a company like yours?
Well, ultimate accountability rests with the company leadership and the board, and our AI program is supervised by the board of Accenture as part of its oversight over ethics and compliance. But it's very much an individual accountability as well. Doing the checks, when a AI gives an answer back to you, just stepping back and thinking critically, because using AI is not just abdicating your responsibilities as an individual. You still need to be doing the checks, as I said before, making sure that it makes sense. Does it feel odd to you in the way in which it's running? And the only way we're going to get there is by increasing literacy about how AI works. If you're not using AI in your enterprise today, I think you're going to be left behind. You really do need to be using it and understanding it as well.
In fact, for in-house teams, which you seem to be, you are leading in-house teams, how AI is being used, and from what are the risks in deployment? How is it transforms your work profile? Of course it does. But what is the impact of deploying AI in in-house teams and companies?
It's quite radical. So for example, for contract formation, which is a lot of what we're doing when we're selling Accenture's work, so we're increasingly deploying AI right across that and then stratifying the risk associated with the contracts and deciding when you should have more human intervention about that. And I think lots of companies are doing that around contract generation. The area of legal research, and I think that is really where there are dramatic inroads being made across in-house functions and of course law firms as well. So the days of me going to a law firm to say, for example, give me a whole summary of the law around this particular topic, they really are gone. Now I would do some of that searching myself, making sure I'm looking at the right sources. I might still go to the law firm for validation, and to sense check the strategy we're adopting, particularly if it's a grey area. But a lot of that hack work around research is going as well. In M&A, lots of opportunity there around due diligence, how you do the transaction better, how you do the integration, how you do it faster. So lots of different ways that we're thinking about it. And it isn't just tweaking around the edges of what we're doing. We're actually thinking fundamentally, why do we do certain things? Do we do that because we've always do it? And is there a better way to do it now with either automation or AI tools as well? So lots of opportunity there, I would say.
Patrick, I want to know from you that as you go about deploying AI in companies, and it's completely changing the face of, as you mentioned, how law firms work.
Yeah.
This is an offhand question. Does it mean smaller law firms and smaller legal teams in companies? Because you seriously really don't need as many people now. Unless work, of course, doubles, then you need more people. But has it made companies leaner, meaner, more efficient?
I think it's certainly having an impact in the marketplace. I've seen that a lot in the UK in terms of the number of graduate hires coming into the professions. And it's not just legal, it's also the other services professions. But that said, we're still hiring, we're still getting people in. I think there's just going to be a period of orientation where we figure out, okay, what are the new tasks people should be doing?
For the youngsters, I want to ask you, young lawyers who wish to work for companies like yours and others, what is the extra work that they have to put in for them to be relevant to companies like yours and others?
They need to be AI obsessed, and I think make it part of your day, understand the tools, be very intellectually curious about what is going on, be thinking very widely as well about how you would want to work. I mean, where do you think those opportunities are for you to show both judgment and strategy as well? In employment law, for example, I think empathy is something that you can't automate away either. So that's another key skill.
In fact, I want to ask you also, India generates one of the largest data in the world simply because the number of population, the number of companies operating here. What role do you see India playing in AI development? Of course, there are many companies from outside India that are working here, but of course, the AI development will take place here because the user data here is simply much larger than many other countries, which is required for learning models for AI. Mm-hmm. Could you see what role will India play in AI development in the next decade or so?
I think India will continue to play a critical role because of the sheer talent that lives in India and that comes out of the universities here, and we see it in terms of the recruiting that we do into our organisation as well. There is a strong entrepreneurial innovation mindset that Indian people have, that our Indian workforce have as well, and so we're continue to build big hubs of great talented technology people in India.
One of the last questions that I want to ask you, if you can answer it in a detailed way, would be with huge introduction and deployment of AI across in government work, in private companies, in law firms, hotel industry, wherever you go, you see AI being deployed. Do you think AI governance and regulation are still nascent and are going to be shaping up in a big way in the coming years? There will be some international bodies that will sort of come up with some standards for AI in every sector. Or do you think corporate self-regulation will drive this? Because a lot of things people don't understand as of now because everybody is deploying AI. But do you see regulation coming into this space in the future?
I think there has to be more regulation.
Standardized.
It needs to be principles-based, but it really needs to build trust with people as well, because if people don't trust the AI, then they won't use it. They will mistrust government or corporations in terms of the way in which they're using it. And that's why I think that approach about responsible AI becomes so important. And I think for companies and governments, the question always should be, particularly for some of these higher risk use cases, just because we can, should we? And that's, I think, that human in the loop, human in the lead. Step back and think, does this make sense? Is it right for our people? Does it respect human rights? Does it respect our company values and so on? But I think regulators are still, as I said before, still in a catch-up mode.
I have 2 minutes left, so I want to also ask you this question. That from a compliance perspective for companies, what are the risks that companies face while deploying AI systems? The legal liability, the reputational risk, or the regulatory penalties? Because in the end, you are sort of giving your work to someone to sort of perform. And this is for the first time. First time because when the computer came, say, 40, 50, 60 years ago, of course, it was new. And obviously, this technology was fine-tuned. Now, AI is again a new tech. From the compliance perspective, what are the risks involved?
Well, when you've got so many applications of AI being deployed in an organisation, yes, it does come with huge risk. And that is why literacy amongst your workforce becomes so important, to understand what AI does, to understand its interactions with other people, the high-risk use cases. That is so important. And we're investing a huge amount of money training all our people about thinking critically about how our AI works and what should happen. Because you're right, if you get it wrong, the consequences are huge. It might be regulatory fines, but really important, reputational as well. You know, I talked about trust a moment ago. Your trust would just go like that if people don't trust you.
One quick comment before we end is the common AI user talks about hallucination. Yes. That, AI hallucinates. Yeah. Do corporates face the same issues as commoners when using AI?
That's why the humans need to check, I think.
That's why the human element.
Exactly. And I think there are too many examples that we read about in the press about we've heard these examples of fictitious cases being quoted to judges.
Yes,
it's super embarrassing.
You read about that.
Oh yeah, super embarrassing. Or audit reports being generated
Rowe,
which are wrong. Yeah. So that's why stepping back, being critical about it always makes sense. And for example, if I was going before the High Court of India, I would be checking all my citations.
So thank you, Patrick. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for discussing various aspects of AI. In fact, for my viewers, one key element and the key takeaway from this interview, in addition to many fine points that Patrick Rowe made, was he was saying that the human element of supervising what AI does is very important, and you need experts who are very, very good to be able to see the output and also give a value add. Am I right on that, Patrick?
Absolutely.
So he says the humans are not going away anywhere. It's just that they need to work a little more harder than they did before, because they're going to evaluate why the AI does contribute to it and make it better. I would like to thank you for coming on the show. Look forward to see you and recording with you on your next trip to India, and hope you have a great time here.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.